There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Friday Reads. It's a little bit cool, but I probably still would have gone outside, except I am getting a parcel delivered. And trigger warning for people that go apoplectic when they hear the word Amazon mentioned, but I ordered a couple things from Amazon. And in Saskatoon anyway, they use a courier service that I absolutely hate because, and maybe I'm just getting used to the way things are done in Canada after being in Japan for so many years, but this courier service sends an email to say our driver, and they give the driver's name, is going to be dropping off your package in the next 3 hours, and I think they usually come within 3 hours. But if you're not home, then they send another email to say our driver will attempt delivery later, but they don't give a time. And when you phone the company number, it is absolutely not possible to arrange a time, like a 2-hour window, 3-hour window, nope. And the driver will attempt delivery 3 times and then send the package back to Amazon. And that just drives me crazy. I haven't had a package sent back to Amazon, but then if they do 2 attempts, because I'm not able to schedule anything, I can't work around their schedule, I'm risking getting it sent back. And so it just makes me, it just drives me up the wall. So I didn't think ahead, and the delivery is any minute now in the next maybe 2 hours. And so I don't want to go outside because I might miss it. It's, what is it? It's a chair cover for this desk chair that my mom gave me. It's very comfortable. It's pseudo leather, but the pseudo leather is, every time I get up, more little pieces of the pseudo leather break off and start strewn about and fall on the floor. And so the carpet is always dirty in here because this piece of crap, the chair is good quality, I think, but the the fake leather thing is just disintegrating. And so I'm getting a chair cover with my favorite color, green, to cover it up, and maybe that will solve the problem. So anyway, I don't have much other news. I had a delightful visit with Lindy and Lori, and it's lovely to have company where you don't want them to leave, because that doesn't always happen. But I didn't really want them to leave on Sunday. You know, I enjoyed having my own space again, but we just had a lovely time. Low maintenance guests. That's what they were. The only thing that I wanted to say was that my 5-year anniversary came and went last Friday, and it didn't even really dawn on me. So this is just not the right year for me to put on a big celebration the way I have in most other years. So we'll do it up really good for the 6th, but I have just been this major life transition, and I haven't found work, and I'm pretty preoccupied with finding work. So I just couldn't focus enough, couldn't dwell enough on it to make something happen. I got a lot of great suggestions from you, and I will probably be using many of those next year. If I happen to hit 5,000 subscribers before I hit my 6-year anniversary, then I think that's really doubtful. My channel doesn't grow that fast anymore. It used to, but it doesn't now. It's growing, but slowly. I might put on the big splash for the 5,000 subscriber thing, but it will probably be my 6-year anniversary early next September. And we'll do it up good. Speaking of work, the English composition correction service in Japan that I got this new part-time job, it's actually picking up a bit. It's keeping me busier. It's still very low pay, so I'm not sure it'll be enough. And I have some other leads that I'm going to be exploring very soon, but I'm pleased that there is more work. People who I've marked 1 or 2 of their assignments are starting to request me to do more other ones in the future, and that I get 1 more penny a word if they specifically request me. So that's gratifying, if not particularly lucrative. But we'll just keep going with it. So let's get into the books, and I don't have much book stuff to talk about either. I did forget to say one thing with all the book stuff I had to say last week in the joint Friday reads with Lindy, but aside from that book that I had started the week before that I'll tell you about, I haven't started anything new, but I have finished up 2. So the book that I forgot to mention last week, It was in my notes, but my eyes just kind of skipped over it with all the excitement of doing a Friday Reads with Lindy of Lindy's Magpie Reads, was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, which was the Mooks and the Gripes bucket list book that I promised to read this year, and I started it about 10 days or so ago. I'm doing it as an audio text combo. I love the audio narration. I'll put the narrator's name in the show notes because I don't remember it. And just reading along with the ebook. And I am already quite well apprised of what all the fuss is about East of Eden, because it's just a meaty novel that I have fallen deep into in the first, 4 chapters or whatever. I haven't read very much of it, and it's probably going to take me till the end of the year, but it's a book that I want to pick up. I want to keep going. It's just gorgeously written, and extremely nuanced, fabulously developed characters, who I'm just getting to know. So that's all I really have to say about it, but I think it's going to be one of those very special books written by a man that's going to become one of my favorites. It's really, really starting out to be that kind of a book. I finished 2 short books for Shorty September. They were both meaty short books. None of this fluff that I see a lot of people reading. That's fine, to each their own. This was not fluff. This is Storying Violence, Unravelling Colonial Narratives in the Stanley Trial by Gina Starblanket and Dallas Hunt. It's about the trial of Gerald Stanley, who was a Saskatchewan farmer very close to my parents, the community where I grew up in, southern Saskatchewan, who shot and killed a young Indigenous man. The story that the white people involved claimed was that this car full of drunk Indigenous young adults swooped into the yard and started trying to steal like a tractor mower or something, and this and that, and that the farmer's gun discharged without him intending to shoot it. He shot warning shots in the air, and then it discharged when he was trying to, I don't know. It's a contentious story, and this book by 2 Indigenous writers and thinkers is about all of the colonialist assumptions that went into how that story was created and how the trial played out, because the farmer, Gerald Stanley, was acquitted. And this ended up being an incredibly powerful read. A lot of it was territory I visited already in my reading, but a lot of it was new. I complained when I first started it that the vocabulary is a little bit academic, a little overly theoretical, so it's a bit triggering for me, the language, because I didn't have a very good time at grad school. But that aside, is a profound little book that I think anybody who cares about Indigenous issues should read. I got so much out of it. One of them was the phrase, the murderable, that suffix, able, the murderable Indian, and how colonialist Canada has created this ideological sense of itself, as especially in Western Canada, of the rural pioneer white farmer against the criminal Indian who wants to take and steal and is a threatening presence that must be, if not eliminated entirely, certainly when an Indigenous person comes on your land, you are well within your right to defend your property and murder them. The murderable Indian. That was a powerful idea that these authors explore in ways that was an eye-opening experience. Usefully uncomfortable experience. Probably the one of the central insights that I got, and I'm going to read you a paragraph, and you can see the language. The language is highfalutin, but I hope that you can also see what they are saying, that you can distill the message from the words. And that is the way that white people are so, and I'm counting myself in this category, obviously. When I say Canada sucks, I'm also saying that I suck as a white Canadian. And this gets at the heart of the issue of why it's so difficult to foster any sort of real sense of reconciliation. It's a word bandied about by governments, and it's just bullshit, most of it. But this gets at why it's so difficult to share space together. Many people informed and uninformed, see their everyday actions as divorced from colonial governing systems and institutions. Many see themselves as independently self-made individuals, unburdened by the violence of the colonial histories that have produced the present. But colonialism forms a scaffolding that is largely invisible to those who do not experience its harmful consequences firsthand, or who deny its connection to the disproportionate levels of suffering faced by Indigenous peoples. And that is exactly right. And that wouldn't have occurred to me in quite the same words until I read that paragraph on page 50 that just really resonated with me. That's how we construct our identities and our culture, and that's how we see our history. We're self-made, and the stuff about the past has no effect on us. And it's complete and utter bullshit. And it's one of the many reasons that Canada is such a terrible place. So this felt transformative to me by the end. It's a book that I will be returning to over and over. If you don't like that kind of language, that kind of prose, you will struggle a bit. It has a great bibliography at the back. I've already found PDFs of some of the articles that I'm going to be rereading shortly. But there's also some mistakes in the bibliography. Like there's references to books that are not listed in the back. That happened a few times as I was checking things out. But quibbles like that aside, I really found this to be quite stunning. And this little novella set in Kenya just blew me away. And this is How to Stay Alive by Shingai, Njeri, Kagunda. I keep screwing up on the surname. It's Kagunda. The author, Kagunda, is an acquaintance of Bill's. Bill is one of my star guests on Bite Size Book Chats, and the last Bite Size Book Chat that went up with him was about this book, and I ordered it. I have read it for the Kenyan Readathon, and I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. I thought the ending was not quite as powerful as the rest of it, but the rest of it was so incredibly powerful, and the ending was only a little less powerful. I feel effusive about how much of a 5-star book this was, especially because the story is one that talks about time travel. And, you've heard me, if you've been following along, Octavia Butler's Kindred. I read it years ago and loved it, but I really struggle with anything that gets a little too woo-woo, that goes beyond the parameters of realistic fiction. This one very much did, but it also reminded me of Akwaeke Emezi's Freshwater, which was my top read of maybe the year 2017 or whenever it came out. And that book also delves into African spiritual stuff in a way that just riveted me. This, in a very similar way, riveted me. It was so incredible. In 97 pages, an exploration of grief, introducing themes of queer life in Kenya, and in the time travel stuff, which just gripped me. I never had any of the usual trouble. Just suffice it to say, I found that part of the story beguiling. The writing here is gorgeous. The structure is so tight. One of the narrative voices is time itself, and that was so beautifully written and so powerful. Let me tell you a little bit about what it's about. I don't want to say too much because it's such a short book that I'll soon move into spoiler territory. But I guess the main character, if it's not time itself, is Nyokabi, and her brother has committed suicide, and so it's the funeral. And a distant cousin gives her some potion that she doesn't know anything about, but she tries it, and she ends up being able to time travel back and talk to her brother and find out things that she didn't know at the time. Kagunda has such a light touch in the way you just get a little bit of the story of what she visits and finds out, but the emotions are so powerful, and the going back and forth, vaguely reminiscent of the way it was in Kindred. It's so disorienting for Nyokabi. And maybe the last thing I'll say, and I'm just going to tease you with this because you have to read the book to find out, she then just brilliantly links that to colonial Kenyan history, to a real life figure that existed and was a powerful anti-colonial activist or trooper, fighter in the early 20th century, I believe, and was persecuted beyond belief by the colonial bastards, the Brits, that had control of Kenya. And that she can introduce that in such a short book. I mean, it just sent chills down my spine the way history got embedded here. Now, I will say that near the end of the book, there is a conversation between Nyokabi and this distant cousin that just didn't work for me nearly as well as everything else, and it was so info dumpy because there were a lot of strands to tie up, and I think this novel tried to tie up too many of them in what was actually, in some places, a rather banal and not nearly as well written conversation, where there was a lot of attention paid to drinking the tea and just kind of stuff that was not very important, and then alongside that, too many strands of deep strands of the story being quickly summarized and tied up, that didn't work for me. It wasn't enough to knock a star off, but it wasn't as effective in the way it closed. So I think it should have been a little bit longer. So she could have resolved or at least explored those in more detail instead of compressing it into a conversation over tea. That's my one criticism. I will read absolutely anything Shingai, Njeri, Kagunda writes in the future, and this was a piece of, I'd say, highly literary, gorgeous writing. Oh, a lot of it read like poetry. A piece of gorgeous writing that isn't quite literary fiction, or by some people's definition, but my definition of literary fiction is anything that I like that's beautifully written is literary fiction. But you could call this the press, Neon Hemlock. They publish speculative fiction, so I guess in a way it's kind of more speculative fiction, and I've always said I don't really like speculative fiction, so rather than change my mind about that quite this soon, I'm just going to say this is a work of literary speculative fiction, but I'm being silly here. The important part, the sober, serious point I want to make is I absolutely loved it, and you should rush out and read it as well. All right, so that's what I finished. So I'm going to start two, and they are not going to be short because one of them is. One of the books I'm going to be starting is a reread for me. I haven't done any rereading this year, I don't think. And this is one of my favorite novels, The Lost Garden by Helen Humphreys. I am rereading it because I'm going to be reading it over Voxer to Kendra Winchester. I gave her a copy of this years ago because she is such a Virginia Woolf fan, and Virginia Woolf plays an interesting part in this novel. She's not a character, but her death really affects the protagonist. So that's when it was set in the 1940s. And I'm going to love rereading it, and I'm going to love reading it aloud to Kendra. But I sent her a copy years ago, and she hadn't ever gotten around to reading it. And she said, well, it's not on audio. What do you think about reading it to me? And I said, oh my God, I would absolutely love that. So I'm going to get started on that right away. And that won't take long. This will be for Shorty September. The other one is not, I don't think. Hernan Diaz, his novel Trust. I can't remember if it made it to the shortlist. I can't even remember if the shortlist came out. I think it did. Yeah, it did. But I don't remember if Trust made it to the shortlist. But his newest novel, Trust, was on the long list. And Bernie of Bookstagram fame, he's been showing up on BookTube here, there, and everywhere. He is a fabulous reader, and his Instagram posts are so warm and inviting, and erudite and just very, very appealing guy. And he and I are becoming friends. And so we're going to do our first quasi buddy read. This is the style where we don't check in after every few chapters, but just at the end we're going to have a Zoom chat and talk about it. And the book is, I believe it's Hernan Diaz's debut, In the Distance. Came out about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm going to read it on ebook. I want to finish it by the end of September, so it shouldn't take, I won't take too long on it. How long is it? It's 256 pages, so it doesn't quite qualify. I don't know if there's a definition for Shorty September, but for me, a book that I would consider for Shorty September is 200 pages or less, and I've got them all on one shelf. This shelf here is it's not my TBR, but I'm going to be reading as many of those as I can before the end of the year. And I'm going to be starting these two this week. So that's all I got. Short and snappy Friday reads. I hope you've had a great week, reading-wise or otherwise. I always used to end my Friday reads with that, and then I got really sick and tired of it, but I don't think I've done that for about 4 years. Thanks for watching.